Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video. Hope everyone's well wherever you are. And as per usual nowadays, I'm recording on Facebook and YouTube. Thankfully, I've got my Facebook profile back, so I hope it lasts for good this time. I'm not posting too much because I'm like, I don't want to give people too many notifications. Excuse me. And secondly, I don't want Facebook and YouTube to delete my stuff. Delete book, I was going to say. But yeah, hopefully they won't anyway. God willing and Godspeed. But yeah, so this is part 3, the third and penultimate part of this list, and behind schedule. Technically, it's a Sunday now, but as per usual, I'm behind schedule, which is one of the reasons why I really don't like getting distractions or sleeping too much or whatever. But it is what it is, I guess. Again, I'm behind schedule, not very organised with time. But here goes. I think I'm going to jump straight to. I can't really think of much to say for the intro. Just hope I remember everything I wanted to cover. And here goes. So these are pointers number 21 to 30. Pretty much an hour or two behind schedule, but it is what it is, I'd say. Whatever that means. And here goes. So number 21, I'd love to. I wasn't sure whether to cover, because I think like the same 21 again, to cover what some of the things I covered in parts 1 and 2 of, so I'm not going to cover all of them, but I thought the things that I've discussed, like, I know people could check back on parts 1 and 2 or watch them if they haven't seen them, but hint. But on a serious note, I wonder which bits to cover or whatever, but I talked about like investing together and the goal of having enough money whether we work or not, and it's something people might want to still have their regular job, especially if they enjoy it. Like, say if you're a teacher or you work in McDonald's but you enjoy your colleagues' company, or you have friends where you work generally, wherever it might be, or you work in a superstore or whatever and you enjoy it, I think you could have that option. Let's say one day in the future you no longer enjoy it and should go lose your job, heaven forbid, at least you've got that safety net, basically. But it wouldn't come from welfare or anything like that. It would come through that investment. And I think I forgot to say about how I would love for Schwab Corp and Virgin Money, and maybe even other NeuroDIVERSE people, to I said about them investing our money on our behalf and hopefully being able to trust them to invest our money on our behalf. I don't really trust Bitcoin or crypto generally, because I think it could come crashing down tomorrow, and heaven forbid you lose all your money, which defeats the object, I guess. But I forgot to say, I'm pretty sure that some of us, they could teach us how to invest as well. Some of us might just be happy just to have enough to live on, and just say, could you invest this money on our behalf? And I suppose the more money you put in, the more they could get back. You could get back. Sorry. And I hope it would benefit Schwab Corp. So, for instance, if all the and Virgin Money, because hopefully, if they have all their fellow neurodivergent people, as the founders are dyslexic, which comes under neurodiversity, if they have all their fellow neurodivergent people as customers, hopefully it will help them to compete. Like, it will help Schwab Corp to catch up with or even overtake like BlackRock, Blackstone, and Vanguard and others. But at the same time, maybe we could even ask which one's going to give us a favourable rate. But I lean more towards Schwab Corp because it was founded by a dyslexic guy, and I think it'd be cool if they worked with Virgin Money, and maybe they could share ideas and do even better together. Also, I mentioned about how I'd love to interview my fellow neurodivergent people in offices, buildings, or whatever, on Zoom and in street interviews and whatnot, and find out about historical experiences of neurodivergent people and maybe how they've changed. And I talked about supporting each other on social media and things like that. I'm going to move on because I've looked at the clock in the corner and I'm behind schedule as usual. So I'm going to crack on to, I'd love to be able to finish part 4 for once and get around to all 4 parts. It's a bit like playing Monopoly and then not getting around to finishing, and someone has to leave and you don't get to finish, I guess, when I think about it. But anyway, moving on, number 22, talking about people's experiences. I'd love to see what has changed and maybe interview people, like say on Zoom, interview people of all ages, sometimes with their parents there if they're younger, they're under 18 or whatever. But if it's on Zoom, hopefully people know it's a safe environment and whatnot. I talk about like how there needs to be like child protection and safeguarding and that kind of thing. And hopefully people will learn about that and how to keep children safe and all that kind of thing. Maybe even have like a tracking device to make sure that people know where their children are and that they're safe. But I hope they'll be in the safest environment possible. But it'll be interesting to see how things have changed for the younger generation, if they have at all. I'm sure, obviously, in the past, they used to be able to have the cane and things like that, but has teacher training changed in terms of like, do they still shout at people and put people down or whatever? So I remember, thankfully, I didn't grow up with the cane around, but there were one or two teachers. I can't remember a maths teacher I had called Mr. Ward, who used to just like to yell at people. Completely nuts. But says me. I don't like to yell at people, but I'm mad in a different way. But anyway. Yeah, I wonder how things have changed. Although I'd love for us to create our own independent schools for neurodivergent people, as well as like investing together, networking together, and so on and so forth. But yeah, those could be ways where we could be financially empowered. I'm talking about financial empowerment. Point number 23. I say I'd love for us to be financially empowered through those range of methods, investing together, supporting each other on social media, interviewing each other, collaborating together, sharing ideas, as well as like facts, stats, knowledge, information, and figures and things like that, and going through those figures and different information and basically knowledge to help us and to be empowered, and that kind of thing, and sharing experiences and things like that and investing together. So hopefully those investments will help. So we'll have money whether we work or not. Social media could be another way to help. Look at how we can save money together and get the best possible deals on our shopping, electricity, rent, and all sorts of different things legally and without. I don't think we should force anyone to change or whatever. I know controversial view. Someone was saying like there should be rent control. I don't really believe in stuff like that. The government getting involved in people's business. In fact, that's one reason why I want to create our own independent schools and invest together and run our own businesses and do all these things, so we don't have to force anyone to teach us in a certain way or to learn certain things or to change what they do or things like that, change the curriculum if they don't want to change, whatever. We'll create a better one, better system hopefully. And also I don't want to force people to give us jobs again, so create our own. So yeah, having our independent schools. Sorry, knees really itchy. And also our own businesses and investments. So we sort of create our own jobs or careers, or basically at least enough money to live on. In which case, maybe we won't need jobs, especially as the economy is going the way it is. But learning AI, I think, can be really good and important. But I'd love to see how we can make the world a better place using our out-of-the-box neurodivergent innovation, ideas, and creative thinking out of the box. And I was say to look at how we can make the world a better place, as I was saying, help the most disadvantaged and vulnerable people and animals as well, especially children, young people, the youth, and who are the future, and disabled people, animals, and the poor, and so on and so forth, and that kind of thing. So yeah, helping as many people as possible, and hopefully making the world a better place. Ideally, maybe even helping neurodivergent scientists, including in African and Asian nations, as well as around the world generally, to do research on how to tackle illnesses, diseases, climate change, global warming, and that kind of thing, and yada yada. But yeah, hopefully helping to fundraise for others. And I'd love for us to be philanthropists. I talk about how Saturday I think of like ethics, which I normally think of every day really, but especially on Saturdays ideally I try and think of ethics and that kind of thing. For some reason I chose that as a day for ethics, and I suppose it could be like what to stand for. I talk about like my use of alliterations and like how stand for is similar, like starts with similar letters to Saturday, at least I guess. Just same sort of letters in a different order, I guess, something like that anyway. Obviously Saturday is SAT, but stand is STA. So they're very similar, just like startup and things like that, and words that begin with S like SME and whatnot. That's an acronym on it, but yeah, I talked about how we could bypass, like maybe even bypass the sole trader startup, actually called SME stage, and like invest together. But yeah, I dream we'll be philanthropists, so to help others. So to I do this strange thing where I lose my train of thought in the middle. My brain's really worrying me recently because I'm thinking it's almost like I've got early onset dementia. I shouldn't, not even joke. I hope not, but yes, it's a bit worrying. Like my brain just running out in mid sentence. But I'd say I dream that we'd be philanthropists and give as much of our money away as possible. If I could convince my fellow neurodivergent people, just like I'd love to convince them to fundraise for and invest into, sponsor, and even donate to Italian soccer, Celtic FC, libertarianism, people from former colonies, and the tackling of poverty and that kind of thing. I would love to encourage us to be philanthropists. I suppose that goes with point number 5, like tackling poverty, alleviating suffering, and that kind of thing. And especially once we know we can run business, our next or make enough money. If we know we have that ability, we can be proud of ourselves. But the next stage could be giving that money to the less fortunate and helping to try and give everyone a house, enough to drink and enough to eat, but not through rules and laws and the state and things like that. So I'd love to do it in a libertarian way, basically in a free choice way, without taking away people's free choice. So I don't really believe like the government should be involved in like regulating rent and stuff like that. I think that's what I meant to say earlier, and I can't remember if I got finished that point off. So now I jump from point to point. But yeah, I'd love for us to be philanthropists. Like I was thinking, if I could convince like Emma Grede, or however you pronounce her surname, I think it's quite ironic if you put Y in the end of her name. It would spell greedy, but it would be quite ironic if you gave her money away to the less fortunate people. Like I know Simon Squibb says, who's another dyslexic guy, and he says to give without take. I thought, what if I asked him, like, would you give all your money away except for what you need to live on? So yeah, if I could, I'd convince neurodivergent people to do that, but I think it should be their choice. But I was thinking like 2 people who are both mixed race and neurodivergent, Emma Grede, I don't know how to pronounce her surname, and Stephen Bartlett, who apparently also has ADHD. And I think at that time I was thinking when it was like a month when I was trying to think about mixed race empowerment and that kind of thing. But you might feel better by giving away, or giving rather than taking. I suppose there's a biblical teaching, it's better to give and receive, which is a bit sad because recently there was a lady who said that this is off the topic of neurodiversity, but in other words, I don't know if she's neurodiverse or not, but she said she did an experiment to ask churches, like, would you help with baby formula, whatever that is, like I suppose it's baby food or whatever. I think it's an American thing. I don't know if we have that here in the UK, but since I don't have any children, because I don't want to lose even more here, she asked the churches, and none of them wanted to help her, which is such a shame, because like if you think about biblical principles, as I said, I'm not that religious, but things I do like in the Bible are like about giving to the less fortunate and peace and love and all that kind of stuff. So helping those who are worse off, and it's a shame that the churches said no, and I think it was mosques who said yes. Which I suppose it's good that some people helped her, but I suppose it maybe puts churches to shame. But I don't know if I blame God for that, but maybe they're not following what the Bible actually teaches. But I suppose that's not a neurodivergent thing. That's going a bit off topic, but maybe you'd be empowered when you help others. I'd love to know what you think about that. I know, as I say, Simon Squibb says give without take, but I don't argue if that's true. How can, if you have a lot of money, what if you gave away almost all your money and just lived off minimum wage? That's something I would do if I had lots of money nowadays. But when I was younger, I used to want to have a lot of money, but I did want to give some of it away, but I wanted to keep quite a lot. I wanted to be like the richest person in the world and have loads and loads of money. But now, if I had all the money in the world, I would just keep what I need to live on, and the rest I would donate to those 5 causes I talked about. I mentioned them quite a lot because if I could, I'd spend 20% of all my attention, time, and money on those things. Those 5 causes. But moving on to 24. I would say there's only 24 hours a day, but when it comes to Saturdays, I would say each day really I'd like to have a certain theme. Saturdays and Sundays, I suppose, are obviously the things that begin with S, but normally I think more, as I say, of like startups and things like that, and on Sundays I think about success stories, supporting certain things like certain sports teams or whatever, in my case soccer teams, and things like that, and support different groups like Native Americans and whatnot. But yeah, so Saturdays I have my own things that I wanted to focus on, so I was trying to focus on those, which would be different to say Mondays or other days, generally Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and even Sundays to an extent, although they both start with S. But right, Saturdays starts with SA, and Sunday with SU, of course, just in case you didn't know. But on a serious note, moving on, number 25, I'd love to benefit Republics. Number 26, I'd love to host events for neurodiverse people in nations like South Africa and Saudi Arabia. I suppose they both start with SA, just like, I know it's, well, technically it's South Africa and Saudi Arabia are 2 words and it's an acronym, whereas Saturday is 1 word, but I still think of it like they start with SA, just like Saturday. Or they are, in their case, I say they have the acronym SA. I know, I'm very quick, I know, but admittedly rather strange things about myself, that's what I talk about. But yeah, I'd love to have events, especially in South Africa, because they went through apartheid, and I think if you look at the school system and society and the fact that we have different minds, it's a bit like an apartheid system, although it's not quite the same thing, obviously. For them, it's their appearance and where they're from and things like that. Whereas with neurodivergent people, it's because our brains work differently, like autistic people's brains work differently. So their problems might not be so much academic, whereas dyslexic people's problems are more academic. But the fact that school learns differently, like dyslexia, I think, means thinking pictures instead of words. And it also, the translation is dyslexia, which is 1 word which becomes 2, 1 word which becomes 2, and then eventually 3. So it's dyslexia, difficulty with lexia, languages, from the Greek, and I'll mention that in the past. But I think it would be quite fitting if neurodivergent people showed what we could do to benefit South Africa, given that they went through apartheid. And I say that the school system, to me, and even society generally, has an apartheid system, which is like, if your brain works differently, if you think differently, if you learn differently, if you do things differently or whatever, if you don't conform to society standards, you are ostracized. Whereas with South Africa, it was because of their colour and language and whatever, especially the colour of their skin and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like an apartheid system. Obviously, it's not the same sort of thing. Obviously, theirs is based on their colour of the skin and appearance as well. You physically see it. But if you're autistic and you act differently, or whatever, if you don't follow society's norms and values, you treat differently. So I sort of make that connection. Maybe that's my dyslexic interconnected reasoning. But what do you think? I'd love to know, as ever. Also, I was thinking, like, I wish God would prove, I know this is slightly off topic, but I'm going to try and put it onto the topic of neurodiversity generally as well. But for myself, I wish God would prove his or her existence. I know I've mentioned it in the past, but through doing good things like supporting my writings, videos, and typing. I know I'm talking about myself, but yeah, I think rather than punishment and saying, like, you'll go to hell if you don't believe, or this will happen to you, or whatever, this bad thing generally, yeah, that'll make sense. And I think, like, yeah, proving his or her existence, their existence in a good way, rather than a way of threats, but rather saying, I'm good and I help you plans, or I'll help you plans, or whatever. But bring it back to neurodiversity, I think it'd be good, not just for myself, if God helped neurodivergent people with our plans and whatnot. I wish God would make everyone happy, really, but I do wish God would punish anyone who called me, because I'd say, if I can make a deal with God, one of the things I'd say is, the less I'm called, distracted, or whatever, as in less people distract me. When I say called, I mean, I've often clarified in the past, like, if someone says Michael, and they call me and distract me and they give me errands, I wish God would give them an errand in heaven or whatever. So if they get to heaven, they'll have to do errands there, because each time they call me to do an errand, they would have to do an errand themselves. So if someone thought how I talk to Michael, God will treat me the same way, I think that'd be pretty cool. But I'd say I'd love God more if I wasn't distracted at all. I could avoid all distractions, and the more I get to write, make videos, type and things. I know I'm talking about myself, sorry. No, doing that thing where I talk about myself rather than a neurodiverse group, but as a neurodiverse person myself, I guess. I'd love to find out what neurodiverse conditions I have, but I said before, I could have dyslexia, dyspraxia, possibly dyscalculia, dysgraphia, difficulty with writing, autism, possibly, and maybe ADHD, but very unlikely. I'd probably have more energy if I did. But in the past, I thought, like, if I had autism, at least I'd be good at tech or whatever. But I remember someone going to an event and they said when people found out their kid had autism, they said, "Oh, they must have really good talents," which is a good thing, but it's good because they have talents if you rolled her eyes. But I know I told that story years ago probably, but when they came to my hometown for an event, funny enough. But anyway, so she wasn't happy that they didn't see the full picture. So some people call it romanticism, like saying all autistic people are savants or whatever. It works on a spectrum. So some are low IQ, some are high IQ, and some are somewhere in the middle or whatever, and some have different strengths or whatever. And there's many different challenges as well, just like with dyslexia, which I suppose also comes on some sort of spectrum, I guess you could say. Or neurodiversity generally, but for some reason when people talk about spectrum, they normally seem to mean autism. But I was thinking that maybe if I did have autism, unfortunately, I seem to have some of the negative traits rather than things like that can make me a genius. Savant, like Elon Musk, possibly Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and people like that. I thought it'd be quite interesting if an idiot like me had stuff in common with them. It's not as stupid as me, but anyway, I was thinking point number 26. I normally think of like punishments, but I'd say to God, if I could make a deal, I'd say like each time someone calls me, distracts me, all that kind of thing. Again, not necessarily on my phone or whatever, but if they call me to do an errand or they call me to distract me from my plans, like my videos and my writing or whatever, they would be making me love God less. So I'd love God to punish them. But I'm going to move on to number 27 because one, I want the video to be shorter if I could, and secondly, although I don't really like to edit my videos, I like to keep them as they are for some reason, warts and all, as they say. In other words, including my mistakes and that kind of thing, and weaknesses, to show the real me, I guess. Just like with my punctuation sometimes, but I would love to change and improve my punctuation and my speech and whatever. But anyway, sorry. I'd love to focus more on rewards, and I'd love to believe in whatever religion. If someone asks me what religion I am, I'd love to say whichever religion supports my writings, videos, typings, and works generally, and my 5 causes and my goals as part of those 5 causes the most. That's a religion I'd love to believe in. And hopefully the true God, if there is one, and true religion, if there is one, will be the one to support my goals the most. I wanted to talk more about 1, 2, or 1 or share about. As again, the video is kind of longer than planned, but whoever supports my work, I wish God would reward them. I say works in speech marks or work because, I mean, I don't know if you could class it as work, but I guess it's trying to add value, yes. It's trying to make the world a better place, I guess. But I like to work smart instead of hard, whatever, if I can. But moving on that note, I would love to have said that point in number 7, sorry. Working smart instead of harder, better late than never. Number 28, I hope we can make the world a better place. I say, I hope we can turn negative situations into positives. I'd love to have events for neurodiversity awareness in republics, especially. And as I say, South Africa, I talked about, and Saudi Arabia, a bit of a biased reason as well, just because Mohammed bin Salman has similar initials to me, and I'd love to encourage him to invest into Italian football and Celtic. Number 29, as I mentioned, singers, songwriters, and whatnot, and I love to support neurodivergent people to network and support each other generally. And number 30, some of the ideas I have I probably shouldn't share in these videos, but I talk too much anyway, give too much info away, but something I'm thinking about, but I'm not going to include it here. But anyway, I'm out, and peace and love.